All right, I'm actually going to do it from back here.
All right, you ready?
So, yes, candidates, come on up and take a seat on one of the stools. I'm Kevin Clark, moderator of this candidate forum. We're joined today by Mr. James Winn and Dr. Randy Grellner, Republican candidates for Oklahoma Senate District 21, which is currently Tom Duggar's seat. Kurt Murray's name will appear on the ballot. However, he has suspended his campaign, so he's not here today. A map showing the district boundaries. I'm going to put it up over here too.
Electronics, right? Can you hear there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, my dad always said you don't get a free lunch in this world, and I came here about 3 months ago, and now I'm out here sitting in front of everybody, getting ready to get the arrows thrown at me here. So I guess he was right. My name's Randy Grellner. I was born and raised out in western Oklahoma. My family, both grandparents, homesteaded out in western Oklahoma, Kingfisher, Okarche area. It's not really west when you talk to people from Woodward, but it is from here. And we moved to Kingfisher shortly after Mom and Dad got married for opportunity, farming, agriculture, and so they raised 4 of us out on the farm. And in 6th grade, this little school we were going to had 25 kids in it, shut down, and so they moved us into the big town of Kingfisher. And so we graduated there, and it's a good town. It's great. Small town America is kind of what I enjoy. My twin brother and I headed off to OSU in the fall of '84, and we were here, got agricultural economics degrees, and enjoyed the college experience. Went out and got jobs because we were broke, and he went into he sold ag chemicals. I sold pharmaceuticals for Eli Lilly for about 6 years. But about 2 years in, I knew I didn't want to leave Oklahoma. I didn't want to raise my family in corporate America, San Francisco, Indianapolis. And so I started back to pre-med, taking classes. And in 1994, went to OSU's College of Medicine in Tulsa, graduated in 98, residency through 2001, and then moved back to Cushing. So drugged my wife to Cushing. She's still bitter. But she was born and raised in Edmond, but her father, my father-in-law, was raised in Cushing, and I wanted to go back to small town. So we had agriculture, farms. We have about 200 mama cows, and so about 1,800 acres of land there that we take care of. But it's been a great life. And so you get 2001, you come out to Cushing, and you go to work, and you forget about the rest of the world, right? Because that's your fish bowl or your little pond. And
We're way past
oh, okay, sorry. But anyhow, so woke up in 2020 and have been concerned about this country ever since. So.
Mr. Winn, you're up.
My name's James Winn. Started out life, I was born here in Stillwater. We basically lived in Cushing in the beginning of my life, and then ended up moving to Mantford. My mom was a school teacher in Drumright. Grandma was a school teacher in Cushing her whole life. I went to college at NSU, got a degree in safety management and industrial operations. That kind of led me into the oil and gas industry. Kind of worked all around the oil and gas industry, all the way from rigs to refinery work to pipeline work was where I kind of last worked. And then I kind of stepped away from that to be closer to my family instead of traveling so much and everything, and to kind of enable me to do more political things and kind of follow the dream in politics. So that's kind of where I'm at, and hope that suffices.
All right, so the first question goes to Mr. Winn. Both Governor Stitt and House Speaker McCall have strongly advocated for another income tax reduction, which in McCall's words is strongly warranted. Senate President Pro Tem Treat has indicated the Senate has supported tax cuts that are reasonable, rational, and sustainable. He went on to say, since the state portion of the grocery sales tax has already been eliminated this session, we can't afford another income tax decrease at this time. Yesterday, news broke that a budget agreement has been reached without a second tax cut. However, the governor could still call a special session to tackle the issue. So here, finally, is the question. As Senate candidates, where do you stand on additional tax cuts at this time? And Mr. Winn, that's your question.
I'm more of your freedom and liberty, minimal government type candidate. So I would support like tax cuts, but I do understand we have to be able to run the government. So I think a lot of the issue with taxes is more the federal level, because most of our money is getting sucked out of Oklahoma going to the federal level. So I would like try to strengthen our independence as Oklahoma to be able to raise more tax money within Oklahoma and keep it within Oklahoma. That's just kind of my stance as a more liberty-minded candidate. I don't agree with tax, and then all those extra taxes are constraining our local businesses and everything. So it's kind of cut the government down and let the businesses go.
All right, Dr. Grellner.
Yeah, I would just say similar is that big government is never going to fix what we have in this country, and we're spending too much on federal and state government. And people, small business and individuals in my practice are suffering because of tax burden and inflation. And there, you know, a guy yesterday is 35, has a great job, and he said it's still tough, you know, and it's tough to make a living. It's tough to pay your food bill and all those kind of things. So I think government needs to, I think we've grown out of control, and I do think that there's never a government program that ever goes away. Once you put it into, you know, it just lives on and on and on, and we keep funding it. And we need to look at ways to get some of these programs shut down that are not useful. And I would just say the budget's $11 billion here in, you know, Oklahoma, roughly. I mean, I think we ought to get it to, you know, $8-9 billion and continue to shrink, because I think I make better decisions with my money and how to invest it than the government does in investing their money. So I think there's too much waste, fraud, and abuse in the government, state and federal. So.
All right, Dr. Grellner, the next question is yours. According to Attorney General Drummond, the current marijuana laws in Oklahoma have opened the doors to organized crime. He indicates 40% of the marijuana consumed in New York City is illegally produced here. In this illegal industry, activities become involved in human trafficking, sex trafficking, and opioid distribution. How do you propose bringing this under control?
Well, we started on a reckless course when we started with this, right? You know, when this was all approved, the people that wrote the bill that we approved was the marijuana industry, right? Well, they're going to write it to where it fits their business and they can sell the most marijuana they can sell. And that's good business, right? But that wasn't good business on the government side. So there's no doubt the trafficking, and we're caught up in it. In Cushing, land is being bought 10 acres here and there, and they're putting all these marijuana grows up. And, you know, it's, I worry about people being trafficked through some of these facilities, and fentanyl coming in through the U.S., which is killing 100,000 Americans a year. And so I think we're going to have, and they're putting pressure on them. I mean, if you meet people there are people maybe in here in the marijuana industry, but the growers are having a difficulty getting approved finally, you know, with the new. And so I think you need to shrink it. I was against recreational marijuana, and I was outspoken on that. And I'm really kind of, you know, I think medical marijuana has its place, but we have done it very poorly in this state. So.
Mr. Winn.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. According to Attorney General Drummond, the current marijuana laws in Oklahoma have opened doors to organized crime. He indicates 40% of the marijuana consumed in New York City is illegally produced here, and this illegal industry activity has become involved in human trafficking, sex trafficking, and opioid distribution. How do you propose bringing this under control?
I would agree with a lot of what he said. Just from where I live, I had probably 6 to 8 probably out-of-state illegal grows move in around me. So I've personally seen it firsthand. But I think a lot of it is the original law was, I guess, a good example of government not doing its job. Because the original law said you're supposed to be a 2-year resident before you get a license. And it's like the word all over the U.S. got spread that Oklahoma was just handing out licenses like candy. And so it's like it wasn't until that word spread that everybody started flooding into Oklahoma. So a lot of it is like we need checks and balances with our government to make sure they're doing their job properly. So a lot of it could have been stopped firsthand before it ever got out of control. Now we're having to deal with it after the fact, after it's blown up, and Oklahoma is the largest producer that's sending it everywhere. And I would agree there was, a farm not far from me, kind of south of Bristow, that ended up having a murder over, bringing trafficking humans through there. And so it's not a good thing. We definitely need to get it under control. They just passed the law on the immigration, so as long as Drummond kind of sticks to his guns and fights, because the U.S. government's already said they're going to sue us over it, but it's like we have to do something to be able to arrest the illegals and get them out of here.
All right, well, speaking of House Bill 4156, that is my next question. Recently signed into law by the governor to be effective July 1, it creates the new criminal offense of impermissible occupation and permits local police to arrest individuals who enter the country illegally. The Oklahoma Association of Chiefs of Police issued a statement indicating the law could discourage crime victims from reporting to police and could damage relationships they have built within local immigrant communities. In addition, on Tuesday, the U.S. Department of Justice sued the state, claiming the new law is unconstitutional, preempted by federal law, and interferes with the federal government's ability to enforce immigration laws. Please share with us why you believe this new law is or is not good public policy.
It's me, right? I believe it is good policy. We can't just keep burying our heads in the sand and like ignoring this fact that it's like everybody sees it by this point. The federal government's argument is it's legal precedent. Well, the Constitution says that the states have authority. The federal government's really supposed to be there to protect us. So it's like we have to start pushing back against the federal government, get our Constitution back the way it's supposed to be. And the only way to do that's, take it all the way to the Supreme Court, and if you lose, rewrite it, reword it, and try again.
Dr. Grellner.
Yeah, I think the illegal, immigrant issue is a huge public health risk. There's, disease, tuberculosis. We're seeing things come into leprosy in, different places. And we're seeing things we haven't seen in a long time because nobody's being screened, nobody's being checked. There's being, 7.5 million so far has been turned loose by asylum or by just turning them loose. So that has to be addressed. And, I think any policy, the biggest thing is, it's America has, the administration has kind of wooed these people into the U.S. through this, through South America. That's the tract, but they're coming from all over the world. And, it's about the stance we put on it. And I don't, shouldn't be approving driver's license, for these people, because that's just one closer step to voting. And it's a right that we have because we're citizens. And, so some of the different things we have to, as a country, we have to stop it. There's deeper things under this than just illegal immigration. This is about upsetting, our economy and putting us potentially in a position where, people are where your actual social system can break down, right? Too much stress on it. And if that happens, you know, we're very concerned about, you know, too many people being here and the social system breaking down.
All right, the next question is yours. The Superintendent of Public Instruction and the State Board of Education have been progressively encroaching into areas that have traditionally been subject to the control of local school boards, such as what books are housed in a school library. They have also been threatening the accreditation status of schools that do not comply with state demands. Do you agree or disagree with a significant shift in practice?
This is light the dynamite stick here, right? Here's what I will say, is that our schools need to be teaching STEM. We need to be teaching things that are going to make our kids valuable when they get into the workforce. I was on the school board for 7 years. We felt autonomous when I was on the school board to make our own decisions, and I think that's an important place for everybody to look at serving, because I think that changes the direction of the country long term. I think that when the social issues brought into the school system is not a place to be played out. I think those need to be handled at home. And so I think that when you I think that there was proper guidance, or there was a good reason to go the direction, but you don't get up after you have a victory and blow your horn. And I think, you know, there are people that we have to learn in this country. We can disagree, but not be disagreeable, okay? I can sit down with anybody here, and I do it in the office every day, pro-life, whatever the situation. They deserve their right to their opinion, and I deserve mine, but when it's all over, you don't taunt each other, right? You shake hands and you walk out and you think about what they said. So I think we need to be able to do that in this country.
Mr. Winn.
Yeah, I believe we really got to start pushing back against agendas that are being perpetrated on us. You know, our founding fathers left a lot of these little hints, like we just said the Pledge of Allegiance before we started. Well, you're not pledging to the flag, you're pledging to the republic. You're pledging to a constitutional republic. And it's like those outside agendas have been implementing and teaching our children that this isn't a republic, this is a democracy. We democratically elect our representatives to effect a constitutional republic. So it's like we have to push back and start teaching that in schools, teaching them, you know, more of our traditions and everything that we've lost through these years. Because I see it as, you know, the decline of America and everything, and I think everybody's starting to feel it. It's not what it used to be, and it's a lot of it's those little tweaks and turns in the education system that we just kind of accepted as getting along, and we don't want to fight and everything else. But it's shown recently like how far it's degraded.
All right. The next question is yours, Mr. Winn. House Bill 1028, co-authored by Stillwater's John Talley, would prevent schools from hitting, slapping, paddling, or utilizing any other means of inflicting pain on students who have disability under state and federal regulations. That results in them being on an individualized education program, on our IEP. According to Talley, more than 460 of our 500-plus school districts have already eliminated corporal punishment for all students. However, in 2022, at least 63 districts documented applying corporal punishment to students who would be affected by this proposed bill. Please share why you support or oppose this bill.
I would support the bill just because of the group it's talking about. But overall, like I was a child that got spanked as a kid. I think there's a place for it as long as it's done properly, not out of anger, not out of vengeance or maliciousness. But that's really for the general population of kids, not kids with disabilities. So that's kind of my thing. It's kids with disabilities. It's too easy to get frustrated and not think clearly, I guess. But overall, I guess through my schooling career, our school took away spanking, but then later brought it back. So they're probably one of those schools you're talking about. But it's, when we brought it back, it's parents have to sign off on it and agree to it. So it's not just blanket, every kid falls into this group. It's you, the parent, has the power to make that decision. To me, that's the way it should be. It should be up to the parents. But it's like we've shown, or it's shown to me, that not disciplining kids totally is kind of lets them run wild, and it's getting out of control in my mind.
Dr. Grellner.
Well, I would say that kids with disabilities, I'd have to look at the bill. I have my thoughts on a lot of things, but I'm not a political somebody that sits in front of a computer all day. I take care of people all day, and so I'd have to look at the structure of this thing. But I would doubt very seriously whether I'd be paddling kids with disabilities. Am I against corporal punishment? Probably not. I would say that it turns some kids around in school. I got one spanking in first grade, and I never got another one, so maybe it's changed my life. I cried like a baby. And it wasn't my fault. Larry Turner, to this day, he's not apologized. So, so I think if used properly, it can be used. It can be done. And we're scared of a lot of things in this society we're living in now. We want to change everything, make everybody. You're not going to make them all happy. That's just the way it is. Let's do things that are right, but hitting some corporal punishment with a kid with disabilities, I'd be nervous about. So.
Okay. Good news. That was the last long question.
Yeah.
All right. So, Dr. Grellner, you're next. For the most part, the Oklahoma legislature has exempted itself from the provisions of the Oklahoma Open Meeting and Open Records Acts. Should the legislature be held to the same disclosure requirements as other public bodies in the state?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, you ought to be able to, everything needs to be open book. That's the problem, is that we have all these deals going on behind closed doors. And so transparency is what lack of transparency is what's making us all nervous about government. It's making us nervous about science. It's making us nervous about a lot of things. And until we open up the doors and people can go in and report on this stuff, or we can go in individually and see these different things, we're not going to feel good about our government. And so the school board was open meetings, and we took our lashings when we needed to, and we took our claps every once in a while. You have somebody clap and say good job, but they have to be, and it's unacceptable they aren't. So,
Mr. Winn.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. I think everything, any government agency needs to be open. Like cameras, sound, everything, all the way down to the courthouses. You know what I mean? Like he's saying, that's what's making us nervous about government. We'd be a lot less nervous if you say like, hey, this is what we were talking about. Here you go watch the video yourself. You can make your own decision. But yeah, definitely everything's got to be open and clear. And to me, there's got to be some kind of recourse against the government when they deny you that. Because a lot of times it's supposed to be open records, and they're like, no, there's no records to that. They just made them disappear. So it's like, to me, we got to have a bill or something that will have recourse for the citizens to air their grievances and actually get the documents that we need.
All right. Mr. Winn, violence at schools, places of worship, and other public locations has become a national crisis. What should we be doing in Oklahoma to address this problem?
I think with violence in schools, a lot of it is like they took the exercise out of schools, like PE every day. Like when I was a kid, we had 4 recesses. So a lot of it is you're taking little boys that are just little balls of energy, and you're trying to get them to sit still all day. And it's put back the exercise, put back sports at a young age, get that energy out, then they're not so apt to be fighting with each other or fighting with the teacher, stuff like that. So that's kind of, I guess, where my stance is on it, is more exercise, more recesses. Studies have also proved the more the kid goes to recesses and you get the breaks out of the classroom, the more they're able to focus and learn within that time frame right after recess. The longer that goes, then the attention span falls off, and then that's where you get the ADD and jumping around and not be able to sit still. So definitely more exercise, more recesses.
Dr. Grellner.
Well, I'd say our kids are being raised in a different generation than I was raised in, as far as electronics, as far as games that they're playing at home all night. They play all night, and you're just like, is this what this, a 16-year-old kid the other day, I'm like, what are you doing this summer? He's like, playing games. I mean, most of us had jobs, I would hope, in here, at 14 or whatever. And so our society is not lending itself, and we're devaluing life in this society. And that's the reason we're seeing the violence. And I think until we change the hearts of people, we'll never change the violence. And you can restrict everything you want to restrict, and you can put bulletproof glass around every facility we have in this country, and you'll still have violence until the hearts are changed. And so I think we have to go back and look at how we're raising kids, and what we're teaching them at a young age, and what's important in this world. And so I think we've made a mistake there, and then we blame it on their actions and how they behave, when we're probably the ones that are at fault.
All right, Dr. Grellner, after 18 years of the state setting aside additional funds to address structurally deficient rural roads and bridges, 1 out of 5 county-maintained bridges in Oklahoma are still deficient. What should the state's role be in solving this problem?
They should fix them all. No, I'm teasing. We're always going to have deficient. Our infrastructure costs so much to put in that to take the money and drag it out and do what we need to do, we're going to have some insufficient bridges. We're going to have roads. It's not about taxing and just going on a building spree. I think that we as community leaders, community people ought to be, we can do some things locally. We don't have to depend on the state government and the federal government for everything. And I think until we get back to a mindset that we're going to take care of ourselves, we're independent Americans. That's what our forefathers were. They were independent. They went out and they took a lot of risk, and we just sat around and wait for the government to do it. And I think we need to be doing some things on our own in these to help our own communities and help our own roads. So, and I don't know how much the bidding process, how much money is waste, fraud, and abuse in that, but I'd like to know. And the only way you're going to know is audit it all, right? And so we need to audit that stuff and take a look at it.
Mr. Winn.
I would agree with a lot what he said. I think a big problem with the way we're spending on roads and bridges and everything is we're trying to get that quick temporary fix instead of building it strong, building it correct, building it like we used to. Like where I live, there's old Highway 51. It's well over 100 years old. It's still there. But they built it right. They built it out of cement. Nowadays, it's let's lay the blacktop over it, and then the blacktop's falling apart in 5 years. So a lot of it is more efficiently using the funds. But then a lot of it is like when I worked in the pipeline industry, I witnessed they come through and put the cable barriers down the highway. Well, they spent millions on cable barriers to turn around within 6 months, pull them all up because they forgot to put the waste or the freshwater storm drains in. So it's just like getting out of step, not efficiently using the funds is a big problem. So a lot of it is like auditing them and getting down to the brass tacks of what's really going on with our money that's supposed to be spent on the roads and bridges.
All right, Mr. Winn. In a state legislature where both chambers have Republican supermajorities, is bipartisanship, or what some would call statesmanship, important?
Yes and no. I think we've came to this point in our country where it's like we got to stand on our morals. We can't just keep giving in, and it's like that's how our schools have got to where they're at. That's where, like, this decline of our country has got us to where we're at, because we kept saying, oh, we need to get along, we need to reach across the aisle. But it's like the other side has been playing the long game, and we've just been trying to play the short game to get along and make everybody happy. So that's kind of my stance. It's time to stand on our morals, fight the good fight, and stand strong, and let's try to restore our republic.
Dr. Grellner.
Well, I think it goes back to, I think we got to get along, right? I mean, that's the problem. Look at it nationally, look at it state, look at it anywhere. I mean, we've been taught the only way to win is to destroy the other guy, right? And that is not what America needs long term. Okay, we all need to work together. We don't have to get along. We don't have to agree, but we have to understand that there are valid ideas on both sides of the aisle. But I do think that we have seen big government and spending programs out of control, and that is you look at it federally and statewide, that's on both sides of the aisle. Okay, so I'm to lay blame on Democrat or Republican is out of control, or I think unacceptable. And I think we need to be working for the common good, and I think people need to go to the Capitol, and it needs to be a sacrifice. It needs to be time out of your life. It needs to be a hard thing that you go down and do, but you do it for the right reasons and not to monetarily gain the system. So, yeah.
All right, Dr. Grellner.
Yes.
If you could change one thing to improve how elections are conducted in Oklahoma, what would it be?
Yeah. Well, that's a good one too. So everybody's on, I don't like the fact that these machines are tied into the grid. Okay, I think that would be on paper. I think that some people would say, well, that's going backwards, but you can always count them. And so I think that's important, and I think that foreign countries that are going to be influencing elections in this country, that have a lot of things at stake future-wise as far as their agendas, we have to try to eliminate those at all costs. But I'd rather go back to paper ballots, sign them, and have your election people there, and put these things away, then put them into into the internet space and have them potentially hacked. So I worry about it with healthcare records every day. And I got a letter the other day. We just, one of the companies we do business with got hacked, right? I don't know how much of my stuff's out there. So why take a risk on an election? So,
Mr. Winn.
I agree. We need to go back to paper ballots only. I think a lot of it, if we kind of peel it back to the mail-in voting, that really to be able to mail-in vote should be a veteran or somebody that's disabled. Other than that, it's like you should be voting in person, turn in your paper ballot, that way everybody can count it. And then that way also, if you have any voter fraud, you can go back, check the voter rolls, and start holding people accountable too. Because we can't keep going the way we're going with them hacking the internet and everything else. It's definitely need to go back to the paper.
All right, we're up now to closing statements. Christy, we're set up for 3 minutes, if you would.
3 minutes each?
Yes. Okay. We have a little bit of extra time, so we're going to let you have 3 minutes for closing statements. We're going to begin with Mr. Winn, since Dr. Grellner went first on opening statements. So you have 3 minutes.
Another thing I kind of want to talk about is we've witnessed nationally kind of how our court systems have declined. A big thing in Oklahoma, our justices are kind of put into position, I don't know how to word this, we the people are not putting our justices forward. It's the Bar Association gets to pick the justices, and then the governor gets to confirm it. Okay? There has been a bill introduced, I think it's SJR 34, to start reversing that and giving the Senate the power to, vet the justices and then nominate them to the governor. It's a much more transparent, much more the way it should be processed. So that's one thing that's dear to my heart. Another thing is like all the poisoning of our food. With the USDA kind of getting corrupted and in the pockets of big ag, big pharmaceuticals, they're doing stuff that as a normal farmer you would never do to your own food supply. Like since 2019, they decided that it was okay to spray glyphosate on the wheat crop to help it ripen up. All this translates into the violence issues, the ADH issues, and everything else. So one thing I would want to put forward is have all our schools contract with local farmers, specifically, hopefully, organic farmers, to provide the food for the kids. So then once you start getting healthy food in the kids at the school, hopefully you'll start seeing the behavioral issues start to change and start to go the right way. That's just two of my ideas. Like I said, I'm a more freedom and liberty type candidate. I'm more worried about restraining the government, letting the citizens be free. But I'm also a very open-minded person. Like if you can explain something to me, I'll listen. So like what he's saying, maybe I kind of worded it wrongly. I'm willing to sit down with the other side and listen across the aisle, but you need to make a logical argument. You need to be able to convince me. We need to be able to sit down for hours and have that conversation and be like, okay, you're right, I agree. I think a lot of that's missing in our politicians today.
Dr. Grellner, 3 minutes.
Well, I want to thank everybody for letting us come up here today. I don't have huge words of wisdom at 58, but I have observations that I've made and, over time. And I think we as a country, we used to be on this, it was a different paradigm where it was they call it the paradigm of shame and honor. And now we're on a paradigm of tear down the other guy. And if we had differences, he and I had differences, we'd go in a room and we'd talk them out, or we may get on the phone. But I wouldn't go get a press interview and tell everybody how sorry he was, right? Because that's what we do nowadays. And we're all made in the image of God. And when you go to tearing down anybody else, you're really tearing down a product that God put together. And this country has to get back to where they're going to go to. We're missing an Abraham Lincoln. We're missing a George Washington at the national level to really guide this country. So as citizens, we're going to have to pick up the mantle and do that. And we need to be careful on how we spit out those words. Old farmer told me best advice is chew on them before you spit them out. Take your time. Be careful what you say, because they have everlasting consequence on people. So the reason I'm going is up there if elected, and if not elected, I have the best practice in the world, and I will live in Cushing the rest of my life, and I won't bug you all again. I tell everybody I want to take my signs, I'm going to make them white and put dog catcher, and I'll run for dog catcher. And if I get beat there, then I'm out. But if elected, my wife is not overly happy about this because we have the best life ever. Our kids are raised. We go see them all the time. We're hoping for grandkids if God blesses us. But I was raised in the best America there ever was, the last 58 years. And I see that declining. And I look at my kids and my potential grandkids, and I look at the kids I take care of in practice. And I don't want them to go through what I think they may go through. And so we're going to take time out of the practice. Financially, it's expensive. It's expensive to campaign. I mean, those signs are not cheap. Have you ever seen one of them? But you spend it all because it's not yours. It was given to you. We're not going to take any of this money with us. It was given to you by the grace of God, and you use it to make this country better. And that's what I'm going for. So thanks.
Thank you both for being here today. The winner of the June 18 primary election will face Democrat Dr. Robin Fuxa in the November 5 general election. The candidates will be available for a few minutes at the conclusion of our meeting. Thanks to all of you for being here today.